How could you give him that opportunity to kill you? It was very sweet, but the Brazilian slop revenge. Revenge for the slop. I guess. Hogan, thank you for the gifted. Mint soda, thank you for the 4 months. Vengeance will be mine. Yeah, so my poor tummy last night was not doing great. Where are my Tums? I'm just gonna pop one of these. Don't mind me. The slop just didn't pass and was blocking your guts. No. I know. Are you feeling better this morning? Not really. I mean, yes. But also that was horrible. And so I got less sleep too. I got less sleep. I have so many of these. All over the place. That's what happens when you do Brazilian stroganoff 2 days in a row. It wasn't even the Brazilian stroganoff leftovers. He heated up some chicken nuggets that were from Trader Joe's, I think. I don't know. And then he made a sauce. And then I died. It didn't affect him at all. No, which is frequently the case. Something will affect me. Something will nearly kill me. And he'll be fine. And so then he'll be like, well, I don't understand. I'm okay. I'm like, yeah, well, you and I aren't the same. Murph Dog, thank you for the 21 months. I'm like, oh, you feel okay? Well, you and I do not have the same system. First time catching a stream. I've loved seeing you on a bit fruity. Welcome in. Love to have my love all the fruits. What are the bit fruity listeners? The fruits? That works. All the fruits coming in and saying hi. I was supposed to do the episode this week, but unfortunately, our schedules could not permit. Have a couple of very smart journalists coming on at 10 o'clock to talk all about the world of pink pilling and women in far-right movements, the history of women in far-right movements, because that is certainly not anything new. And then I really want to talk about women who are currently being radicalized. So how do we stop future women from radicalizing to the far right? And this is something that nobody is really discussing, and certainly not with the frequency, the utmost attention that is paid to the manosphere and to the radicalizing of young men. So I'm bringing on two people who are experts on this subject. They have both written about pink pilling. Did you finish the book? I almost finished the book. But then I got hella stomach issues from Will lovingly trying to feed me some food. Then I almost died. It'll be a great post-dinner stream. Yippee! I wasn't planning on watching this upcoming season, but now I have to because Laura's involved. Yeah, I also just am so curious how all of this is going to work. Speed reading stream right now. I know. Should I just read on stream? I'll just put a movie on for y'all and I'll just read. Okay, so let me go back to the Channing Tatum thing. What was the food? The food was some chicken nuggets and some sauce that he made. I don't know what happened. I'm not sure. All right, so Zoe Kravitz and Harry Styles engaged. Kind of random, but also not. You know, makes sense, but dating less than a year. And this is now the third time she's been engaged, because most recently she was engaged to Channing Tatum. And then they split up and everything seemed to be fine despite some swirling rumors around the breakup and the fact that it was very strange timing with Zoe directing a film that Channing Tatum starred in called Blink Twice, which was fine. And now Channing Tatum is being sad boy on Instagram. He posted this poem by writer John Rodell all about the conflict between your heart and brain. Do you like cheese? My brain and heart divorced a decade ago over who was to blame about how big of a mess I've become. Eventually, they couldn't be in the same room with each other. Damn. That's deep as shit. Now my head and heart share custody of me. They blame each other for the state of my life. There's been a lot of yelling and crying. So, lately I've been spending a lot of time with my gut, who serves as my unofficial therapist. Sephiroth posting. The poem continued as it went on to describe how the heart is always sad about something that happened yesterday, while the head is always worried about something that may happen tomorrow. Later that day, he reposted another batch of IG posts, including one that shows people hitting each other with foam pool noodles on the street. The video was captioned, "New therapy tool unlocked. Try it or just have a laugh. Looking for other methods. Read my caption." Lenore, thank you for the prime. I might actually just do this in New York randomly. It seems so much fun. So if you live in New York, just a heads up that you might have sad boy Channing Tatum out in the streets with a pool noodle, and if you walk by, he might hit you with it. So just a heads up to my New York my New York community members here, you might get bopped by Channing Tatum, who's crying in Brooklyn. Yeah, he will definitely be crying while hitting you with a pool noodle. I swear to God, if I get randomly hit with a pool noodle by Channing Tatum, well, you'll know it's because it's therapy, okay? And he says, it seems so much fun. Now, if you follow Channing on IG, you'll know that he's a regular reshare of things he finds funny or relatable. What's going on in that mind of his? So this type of posting is hardly out of the ordinary. However, as you'd expect, fans are taking note of the timing and speculating as to whether his latest post might be a cringe and also kind of hilarious response to the engagement headlines. The draw this woman has on these men need to be steady. She is Channing out here posting on IG like a 2000s teen on AIM. How did he find a post that's so 2014 coded? I will say, sometimes it feels like celebrities are caught in a time capsule, you know, where everyone else is in 2026 and they're in 2013. It's like, what? Have you just been doing this for 15 years straight? Another comment read, OMG, this is so emo. I see you, Channing Tatum, posting this like an aim away message. Men are so fake deep because what the fuck does this even mean? This is also giving when Tom Brady was emo boy crashing out over Giselle Bundchen expecting a baby with her new partner. Remember that? Remember when Tom Brady was emo posting? It's very much the same. It's very much the same vibe. Anyway, just a heads up again, if you live in New York, you might have a run-in with sad boy Channing Tatum, who's got a pool noodle in his hand. Just FYI. Celebs arrest development and get stuck in the time when they get famous and common thing. Yes, it's definitely, there's definitely a lot of that where they are a relic because they do have arrested development and they kind of just forever emulate the time period that they became famous in, or I would say that they were like at their height of fame. It's like the person who peaked in high school. Did you see this situation with Evelyn Haas actually allegedly hired Johnny Depp's PR team to attempt to smear her? I did see something on that this morning. I am not super familiar with the people involved. So I'll probably I'm going to reach out to my gal Kat Tenbarge and see if she knows all about this, which I'm sure she does. But yeah, her boyfriend who was arrested for strangling her is now this morning trying to pull the claim that, oh, actually she was abusive. It's very much giving the Johnny Depp playbook. How feminism turns into fascism. Oop! To warm up our brain holes. There you go. So this will be related to, obviously, the conversation that I'm having in about an hour. Girls, girly pops, my ladies, my gals, my woman warriors. I hope that they can all find their way in here, every single one of them. Every single one of them, so they can hear about all of this.
Published by Political Europe in September 2022. So,
okay, I'm gonna go grab more coffee.
Alice, welcome back to my channel. I want to start this video by reading you a tweet that was published by Political Europe in September 2022. So, in 1992, a 15-year-old schoolgirl went to join her local branch of the far-right Youth Front in Rome. The all-male group of radicals met her with bemusement. 30 years later, Giorgia Meloni is on course to become Italy's first female prime minister. I could end the video here, to be honest, but I'm not going to do that because we have a lot of overthinking to do together. So here we go. What I like about this tweet is that it is the perfect example of the fact that a lot of people have no clue what feminism is. In that case, we're dealing with liberal media that romanticizes Giorgia Meloni's rise as a fascist girl boss. Hashtag go girl, hashtag representation matters. Now, the reason why I titled this video how liberal feminism turned into fascism isn't to say that every single liberal is a fascist in disguise. This view can be a bit reductive and counterproductive in my opinion. However, it is true that centrism, liberalism, loves to resist polarization by seeking a middle ground. In order to do that, they look at the variety of opinions voiced on mainstream media. That's what we call the overtone window, meaning all the ideas and opinions that are deemed acceptable at a given time in the media. Now that overtone window changes with time. It may be more on the left, it may be more on the right. That's why when we talk about liberals seeking a middle ground, we have to keep in mind this idea of the overtone window. The middle ground that YouTube channels like Jubilee and liberal media in general seek at all time is not a middle ground among all the opinions that exist. It's a middle ground among all the opinions within the frame of that overtone window. If the overtone window is more on the right, then the middle ground will also be more on the right and vice versa. That's why many scholars, commentators argue that...
Yeah, and you know how the overtone window shifts, right? When liberals, centrists and liberals say, we need to reach across the aisle and work with these fascists. And the fascists are like, great. We're going to keep moving in the direction that we love to go, which is to the right. And then everybody moves to the right.
There is no such thing.
And then the left, by comparison, will move more to the left and then are held up as deranged extremists.
As centrism. Centrism is always relative to the state of the overtone window. I know this is a bit technical and I know that I chose that as my intro, so maybe a lot of you are already gone, but anyway. So the variation of the overtone window means that an opinion that was once deemed problematic can become neutral, acceptable over time. Let me give you a clear example. In Collapse Feminism, I write about liberal writer Richard Reeves, who wrote a book on the plight of the modern man. Maybe you've seen his face already. He's been interviewed on various YouTube channels and the videos have gone viral. So in the book, he argues that we have reached a point in history where gender inequality might not be as black and white as it used to be.
Maple Ticks, what the heck? Good morning. Also, thank you for the gifted sub.
Or might even be reversing itself. To make this statement, he used data showing that boys are underperforming at school, that they don't go to university as much as girls do, that men, black men specifically, are more likely to go to jail, etc, etc. Now, while all these facts are true and verified, Riff's decision to group them all and analyze them as part of a bigger phenomenon of reversal of gender inequality is a choice. In fact, the idea that gender inequalities reversing itself,
Certainly
or that
is.
matriarchy is on the rise, has emerged a long time ago in men's rights movements. It remained a niche idea, a sort of conspiracy theory shared by small groups of men, until the manosphere grew online and spread this idea in the media. And now Jubilee makes middle ground videos about it, so that means that we are now in the Overton window. This idea is now deemed acceptable. From now on, the belief that matriarchy is on the rise became a valid framework from which to think, to write, to theorize. And that's how you end up with this book, written by a respectable liberal, praised by establishment media, giving credit and a liberal aesthetic to an idea that emerged and remains a manosphere's conspiracy theory.
I mean, look, I will say that there are a lot of liberal writers from liberal institutions who have written so much about young men and the fact that a lot of them are being radicalized to the right, and what can happen even if it's not the intention of these writers, because they're not they're not it's not like they have a vested far right agenda that they are trying to pass through, but it can still reinforce, and it does, the idea that the problem we need to focus on here is specific to men. It's specific to men who are in the position of radicalizing other men, men who are being radicalized, and it just completely erases women from the conversation. And one thing that I'm wanting to get into when I talk with Lois and KYLIE is about how so much of far right ideology is rooted in gender essentialism and very, very restrictive ideas on how women are allowed to be in this world, and their role as the providers of children. And so men's role then as the defenders of, well, white cis women. When we say defenders of women, it's really specifically white cis women. And how a lot of like anti-immigration, anti-Muslim, anti-trans sentiment that has been rising across the US, across Europe, is rooted in this idea of defending and protecting women. So women are not just being used as the reason for this very violent, hateful, bigoted rhetoric and agenda, but also women are participants in this. Women have to buy in to this idea that they do need to be protected and that they have to support these movements for their own defense, that these men, white cis men, are the defenders of their honor, of their role in Western civilization. And so if you ignore the role of women, both as participants in these movements, as historically leaders, even if they were not necessarily the front-facing leaders, women have played an important role in far-right movements throughout time, but then also women being at the center of far-right ideology.
Theory is precisely about how this phenomenon expands in feminist spheres.
Oh my God, for the love of God, let me finish.
So many women who fall into this also end up doing bioessentialism, but from a woke perspective. Yes, because women who are participating in conservative to far right movements and forming this kind of ideology, political ideology, they're coming from all different angles. And some of them will call themselves feminists, but then are, say, racial purists. So it's like they will, it's very much giving white suffragettes, where their concern was getting the right to vote for themselves, but they did not have solidarity with more marginalized people, namely Black people. Namely, they decided to align with racists because they were like, hold on, Black men have gotten the right to vote over us? I don't think so. When we're fighting for the right to vote, we mean specifically for us. So a lot of them were aligning themselves with conservatives, with KKK, with real vile racists who saw the opportunity in having women on their side, having white women on their side, to give themselves a veneer of respectability. And then also would be like, yeah, we'll give you the right to vote as long as you help us with the continued oppression of Black people.
Just sentence, man.
On va leur dire, tu pleures comme une fille, tu cours comme une fille.
The only satisfaction may be that the system is working.
Hyper-progressive position is that sex can be commodified.
Piano I 10 punti di Ursula von der Leyen.
How liberal feminism turns into fascism and what we can do about it. Okay, let's go. So earlier this month, journalist Julia Hartley-Brewer interviewed Palestinian politician Mustafa Barghouti on Talk TV over the war on Gaza. And this is what she said.
Oh my God, for the love of God, let me finish a sentence, man. Maybe you're not used to women talking. I don't know, but I'd like to finish a sentence, sir. Anyway.
So as many have already pointed out, the journalist's behavior is completely inappropriate. She utilizes feminism for racist purposes because she claims that Barghouti won't let her speak because she's a woman. If you watch the full interview, you see that Barghouti struggles to put just one sentence together because he's interrupted all the time. This final attack, an attack on his character, is racist because it is based on the assumption that all Arab men, including Mustafa, are misogynist. In fact, Mustafa didn't say anything sexist, he's not known for his sexism, so this assumption is solely based on racist biases. Julia assumes that all Arab men are misogynist, that it is in their essence. Actually, the idea of essence, essentialism, is going to be a common thread throughout this video because a lot of the people we are going to talk about kind of share this idea. Just to make it clear, essentialism is the belief that objects or people have a set of attributes that are necessary to their identity. A table wouldn't be a table if it did not have legs, and in that case, in Julia's head, misogyny is part of Arab men's identity. Now, feminists who have essentialist biases are more likely to believe that in order to change these men, in order to remove that misogyny, we need to bring them closer to Western values. We need to take them away from their Arab identity. That is what sociologist Françoise Vergès called civilizational feminism. To put it simply, civilizational feminism establishes a hierarchy between a civilized, pro-human rights culture and uncivilized, barbarous cultures.
Yes, so this is rooted in the belief that this is all predetermined because it has to do with biology, that this is not having to do with any type of social order, social conditioning, or social constructs, that by nature, per biological nature, that there are men in this world who are inherently violent due to the fact that they come from uncivilized cultures, that they are their status as migrants or having the religious or cultural beliefs of the Muslim faith So it's also essentialism that is used to claim that gender roles are as such because that is what nature dictates, that's what biology dictates, and not having to do with any type of social construct. So interestingly, it's used by liberal feminists, capitalist, imperialist feminists who are incredibly Islamophobic, anti-immigration, anti-trans, but also by far-right male supremacists who will use the same type of gender essentialist BS to justify their superiority over women, and especially that of white men in this world, their racial and biological superiority.
Basically neocolonialism, sugar-coated with pastel progressivism.
Goosted, thank you for the 5 months. XGU, thank you for the 28 months.
Very clearly in.
Would you like to interview Hartzell Gray for Congress? He was on Brits yesterday. Holy crap, you too. I'm not super familiar with him. Let me look into him. I get a lot of requests these days because I have done I have hosted a couple of people who are running for office on my stream. And let me just...
Julia's interview of Mustafa, when she shouts at him that
it's
maybe
also men fighting other men from other cultures
talking,
for the control and domination of their women. Right.
Between her civilized pro-feminism culture, Western culture, and Mustafa's uncivilized, misogynist culture. She tells him, hey, this is my show. I'm the one in power here. This is Western TV, so you're going to behave the way we do here. That sort of behavior reminds me to a lesser degree of another feminist, girl boss, Hillary Clinton. In her UN speech in 1995, she declared, human rights are women's rights, and women's rights are human rights. Clinton has long been seen as a feminist icon, especially during the 2016 election against Trump. Many saw the election as a culture war moment, opposing.
Looking back on the 2016 election, it was truly option one, rapist, raging misogynist, Donald Trump. Option two, imperial feminist. Feminism, but for wealthy white women. Wealthy white women who also are in great positions of power.
Masculine values of dominance and self-reliance, so Trump, to feminine values of care and selflessness, Clinton. Now, Hillary Clinton is an advocate for women's rights, I won't deny that. But the way her feminine values are used to sort of downplay violent acts is problematic to me. Here is a little list of all the bad things that she's done. This is cancel culture happening right now. So she voted for the Iraq war. She said she regretted it in 2016, but she also backed the humanitarian war in Afghanistan. She greenlit killer drones in Pakistan, Yemen, and Somalia. She's always supported Israel's war on Palestine. She facilitated a lot of defense contracts with many countries around the world, and she supported coup makers in Honduras. So that is what sociologists call visible violence. You see it, it kills people, it destroys infrastructures. But Clinton is also a fervent advocate of neoliberalism, a system that produces a lot of structural violence in the form of deprivation of basic human rights like access to housing, food, job, healthcare, etc., etc. So I wouldn't say that Hillary Clinton is pushing for those feminine values, whatever that means. Because she is a woman, we refuse to see Clinton's act as violent. Because she's a woman, that violence is coded as peacemaking or being pro-human rights. Now this is going to be interesting. Sociologist Colleen Cardy looked at the way girls who committed crimes were treated by the justice system in comparison to boys. She explains that boys are more likely to be sent to prison and girls are more likely to go to education centers. The reason for that, she says, is that the judicial system and society in general struggles to see girls and women as capable of violence.
Yes, so this is a big part of the problem as well as to why I think there's been a lot of ignoring of women's historical role in fascism, as well as women who are currently playing a role in radicalizing other women, and women who are then being radicalized, who are not getting any of the focus. They are once again being ignored, being erased from the conversation, because there is this prevailing stereotype around women as benevolent angels, as incapable of participating in structural violence, in emanating violent ideology, because women are softer. Women are not as violent as men. Women have not been in a leadership role in far right movements in the way that men are, because they are always supposed to be subjugated. Yes, so like even for people on the left who ostensibly don't hold the same views towards women that those on the right do, they still ignore their role in this all, and they still are ignoring the way that women are, young women are also being radicalized to the far right for similar but also different reasons, and the tactics being different as well, because this is where the effectiveness of the softened image of women comes into play. Women who can appeal to other women who may be turned off by the very hostile, aggressive misogyny by manosphere influencers, they fall into the trap of radicalization by women who are women who are really expressing and emphasizing femininity and the woman's role in the world, and women as nurturers, and it's all caged in this kind of divine type of feminine mystique, and the aesthetics and the language and the vibes are a lot softer. Women are used to put a soft face on hard fascism. Yes. And women are vital to the life, the continued life of fascist movements, because they lend it a veneer of respectability. They help to soften the hardcore ideology that can turn some people away because of it being very hostile and going, well, hold on a second. I'm not a racist. I'm not a misogynist. I don't hate women. And yet they can still find themselves pulled into it.
Their response to violence is therefore to change their behavior through education to bring them back to their supposedly natural state, a docile state. Boys, on the other hand, are believed.
Women can never be violent. Everyone in society is taught that women are always pink, cute, motherly, never ever violent. This is also why you see Alice Weidel, Meloni, and Le Pen pop up around as leaders of the fascist right, because they can get away with a lot. Yes, Marine Le Pen specifically softened the fascist politics of her father. And so when she came in, she was like, I'm not my father, although yes, I am. And she had wide appeal. It was intentional. The use of Marine, a woman, and the daughter of a convicted racist who had a ton of influence on spreading Nazism in France. And then Marine comes in and is like, yeah, it's fascism, but also it's it's feminine.
To have a natural tendency to be violent. Because of that, education isn't prioritized. Punishment, on the other hand, is often presented as the only answer to tame those natural violent impulses. Now this allows me to move on to this tweet from French historian and essayist Lucille Pétavin. It says, "The violence of man, again." So this tweet followed a series of riots that happened in France in 2023 after the killing of Arab teenager Naël by a police officer. So a lot of teenage boys from low-income areas went to the streets and expressed their anger in violent ways. Now, who is Lucille Pétavin, and why am I interested in that tweet in particular? Well, Pétavin gained legitimacy on the French media scene after she published her feminist essay, The Cost of Masculinity. In it, she showed how the violence of men costs a lot of public money and therefore should be better tackled by authorities. The problem
Her niece is even worse. Racism, bigotry, all dolled up in a young blonde woman.
with Pétavin's book, and
Gross.
there are a lot of problems actually. Léo from Les Vidéos de Léo made an entire video about it, a brilliant video. So I'm going to share with you the main points, but I highly recommend that you go check out his work if you speak French and support what he does. So it starts with the assumption that girls' education, so the way they are socialized, is good, and boys' education is bad. That statement in itself doesn't seem too bad, right? Well, yes and no. So it's not too bad because it is true that girls are encouraged to develop qualities like patience, care, which are objectively good, right? But it's still quite bad because these attributes are revealing of the nature of the education of girls. An education to submission, that is one of the core arguments of Simone de Beauvoir in The Second Sex. Maybe you know the quote, "One is not born but becomes a woman." Sociologist Manon Garcia explains that de Beauvoir wanted to show that the path to become a woman is a path towards submission. Submission to a father, a husband, the biological clock. A woman is not born submissive, she becomes submissive through education. So when Pétavin and many other feminists like her glorify girls' education, what they glorify is an education to submission. They consciously or subconsciously demand that we all adopt this attitude of submissiveness. Now, the topic of insecurity and crime is a recurring theme in Pétavin's book. She establishes that male violence, a product of toxic masculinity, is very costly. It physically hurts people that need to be taken care of, it destroys infrastructures that need to be rebuilt, and in her TED Talk she explains that half of the population, so women, have a solution to this problem. See the assumption that women are essentially good, women are not capable of violence there. Anyway, so her idea is that if only men could behave like women, so if only men could be as submissive as women, then insecurity would go down and everybody would live in a happy world. Now again, just to make it clear, I'm not saying that feminine values of care and emotion management are bad, no. I'm rather interested in how in the process of glorifying those values, we glorify submission and seek to impose it on others.
Do you think misogynistic men also want to maintain the patriarchy under the same underlying logic that racist people use to justify white supremacy because they fear experiencing what they have done to those oppressed people being mirrored back onto them? So there's a reason why misogyny and sexism often goes hand in hand with white supremacy, that a lot of the emphasis and ideology built around maintaining racial purity, right? A racial hierarchy that white people are biologically superior to non-white people is the same argument that is used in gender essentialism. So you have racial and ethnic essentialism, you have gender essentialism. It's socialism or barbarism. Thank you so much for the 10 gifted subs. Thank you. I appreciate you so much. So they will also then use women, white women, as soldiers, as necessary participants in white supremacist movements, in an agenda built around racial purity, ethno-nationalism, because they will then position white women against non-white men, so often Muslim men, migrant men, black men, and will say these men are inherently dangerous and violent and a threat to white women. So in order to preserve, in order to defend and protect, we need to oppose non-white men. We need white women to align with their whiteness, even at the cost of their gender, even at the cost of rights as women, because of their racial position in this world, in this hierarchy as white. So they're white first, women second. And this is how a lot of women historically have bought into fascism and have been perpetrators of it because of their higher position in the racial hierarchy. And it's why white women were used to lynch black men during the post-slavery era, during Jim Crow South, where white women, all they had to do was accuse a black man or a black boy of having violated them or whatever, and then that was the justification that was needed to violently attack black men and black boys, like Emmett Till, who was brutally killed because of the bullshit claims that he had been going after a white lady. Makes white women feel closer to the power of white men to lord over POC. Yes, it is a way to give white women a sense of power and control in a world where they are restricted due to a misogynistic, sexist, patriarchal culture, but they have privileges because of their white identity.
This rhetoric of achieving obedience through education has been taken on by the government. Our new hot gay prime minister, you seem to all love him.
How do you see that evolving in the modern era? Oh, I mean, look around. How many of these influencers, content creators, politicians, everyday people demonize Muslims, demonize migrants, demonize Palestinian men, call them all rapists, say the reason that we have to genocide all Palestinians is because Palestinian men are rapists. This is just a continuation and a history of demonizing non-white people, and specifically in positioning white women against non-white men by saying that that's who's a threat to them. And no matter sexual and domestic violence that is committed by white men against white women, that's okay because white women are the property of white men, but it's not okay when they are victimized or potentially can be victimized by non-white men.
Road, you need to chill, seriously. Well, he's a true believer in that. When he was Minister of Education, Attal was all about enforcing discipline and obedience instead of actually tackling the root causes of why there is so much disrespect for educators. But let's go back to Pétavin's tweets, because we have another problem. When Pétavin tweets the violence of men, again, in response to the riots after the killing of Nell, she does the exact same thing as Richard Reeves, the guy I mentioned earlier. As researchers, they choose to focus on masculinity, its toxicity for Pétavin, and its crisis for Reeves to explain societal problems. Both explains that it is because of their gender that men behave this or that way. But is it really? Okay, let me ask you a question. What is male violence? Or patriarchal violence, if you want to be a bit more technical? How would you define it? Well, sociologists explain that it is the violence perpetrated by men and meant to reassert male domination over society. It can be
Please
physical.
save this VOD so I can watch later. Yes, I usually post VODs as soon as I finish stream.
It can be non-physical. The goal remains the same. It is meant to assert that men are in power and will stay in power. Now, do you think that the teenage boys and men coming from low-income areas in Paris who went in the streets and destroyed a bunch of things did it because they wanted to reassert male domination over society? Not really. Their violence targeted public infrastructures. It was about class. It was about race. It was about showing to the world what it feels like to be treated as nothing, as if your life doesn't matter, quite literally. Now, some will say, Alice, if it was just about class and race, then women would have joined. Well, that's right. It's a combination of different factors that brought those men in the streets. I mean, we've seen it times and times again in times of conflict. Men go out, they fight, they are violent, and women stay at home, they cry, they ask for peace. I mean, this is reflected in what this journalist said on TV, quoting another journalist. Quote, "I didn't see the portrait of an insurrection, but rather a group of young men who for any reason turned to violence." For any reason. We're talking about the killing of a working class teenage boy by a police officer. I mean, this is wrong. This is not feminism. You see, the big issue with that sort of feminism, bourgeois feminism, is that it does not see class. Even if they pretend to appear progressive, they're always drawn back to their own biases as respectable, civilized women who stay quiet, docile, and won't ask for much. And because of that, bourgeois feminism has a tendency to turn to authoritarianism. We need to educate those boys so that they become obedient like girls. But if they refuse to, if parents refuse to do it, if they refuse to abandon their uncivilized culture, then we need to force them to do so. So what could be a truly feminist response to this? Well, one already exists. In fact, the notion of intersectionality was born out of a desire to go beyond bourgeois feminism, to include class, race, etc., precisely to avoid the authoritarian, pro-carceral tendency of bourgeois feminism. As an example, Angela Davis worked a lot on the carceral system in the US and how it disproportionately targets black men. She showed that the combination of poor material conditions, so a lack of employment, healthcare, and safe housing combined with bigotry, meant that black men are overrepresented among persons accused of violent crimes relative to their representation in the US population. In fact, the exact same thing happened for Irish immigrants in England in the 20th century. As journalist Fintan O'Toole explains, some of the overrepresentation of Irish citizens in English crime statistics may have been down to prejudice, but most of
The cottagecore fashion, also Absalom Jones, Twitch will ban you. So that was for your own good. They will take that unless you're an Asmongold's community and saying that seriously, then you won't be banned. Then you're good. The cottagecore fashion is fucking popping off on all fronts. It's all over Pinterest, Instagram, TikTok. It's one of the cornerstones of girl boss fascism. You see the same patterns in clean girl, Pilates princess. Men fascism is loud, strong, outgoing, and violent. Feminine fascism is way more quiet and aesthetic. The feminine fascist is groomed and formed to fit and submit to the male fascist, even though they seem very different at first glance. Yeah, I definitely think there are a lot of indicators that should kind of immediately clue you into this content creator or this kind of trend having the potential to be yet another radicalizing pipeline. I think a lot of spaces that speak in the mystical and kind of spiritual have the ability to take women and then throw them down this pipeline, because this is also something that has been historically a tool for fascists. The use of like pagan spiritual mysticism. There's a term for it that's called that's been coined that's called conspirituality. There's a whole podcast about conspirituality. And anyway, that's a whole, let me find this one part of the book that talks about conspirituality, differences in recruiting. I wanted to find one example here. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Sorry. Where is it? All right, hold on. I'm just going to keep playing this.
It was undoubtedly a reflection of social reality. The main cause was obvious. Groups of young men lived together in poor quality, overcrowded accommodation and worked like dogs on building sites during the week. Going to the pub at the weekends and getting tongued up was their outlet. Understanding the complex ways in which the violence committed by men is exercised, so understanding that it's not just about manhood, is necessary if we really want to build a more peaceful, equal society. At the same time, it is crucial not to neglect women's capacity for violence. We talked about Hillary Clinton, Melanie, and other girl bosses who use their identity as women to appear less violent. But on the other hand, there are also countless examples of feminist revolutionaries like Emma Goldman, the English and Irish suffragettes, including Christabel Pankhurst, Harriet Tubman, Lakshmi Bai, who resisted British rule. These women who stood up against oppressors were pro-violence. When something is unjust and has been unjust for a very long time, when a community or person has been consistently discriminated against, then I mean, of course, anger and violence will emerge. We cannot impose peace. We cannot tell people to just be docile and call it feminism. We have to build peace together. We have to understand the root causes of anger, violence, dehumanization that so many of us feel. And that might necessitate a little bit of violence in the form of protest, direct action, civil disobedience, which are still kind of cute when you compare to other things that happened in the past.
Okay, here's the part that I was looking for. Oh, sorry, someone has a question. Sorry, if this was asked, and this might be a blind spot I need to deal with myself, but doesn't the girl boss try and operate within a patriarchal framework? I know as bosses I have, regardless of sex and gender, have this tendency to inflict authority in a way it's usually attributed to how men should operate. It always seems like two face the same coin if my view is flawed. So girl boss feminism is corporate feminism. It's Sheryl Sandberg, CEO of Facebook, lean in type feminism, where it is specific to wealthy, usually white capitalists who use feminism as a kind of veneer for capitalism. It is the type of feminism that excludes working class women, excludes women who are not part of the bourgeoisie. It is glass ceiling feminism, the idea that having women in power will lead to equality for women in the same way that like black capitalism or the idea that having a black president will change things for the entire black community, rather than now you just have now you have a black person in the highest position of power who can be tokenized, who can be used as a veneer of progress when it's really a continuation of neoliberalism. It encourages women to play within the bounds of capitalism, change nothing. Yes, it is very it's very class focused, but not from the perspective of not from like a working class perspective, but from a capitalist class. Even if girl boss feminists try and deny or distract away from it being the type of feminism that is a capitalist first, a neoliberal imperialist type of feminism. You know, Hillary Clinton would call herself a feminist. She wouldn't call herself a capitalist feminist. She wouldn't call herself an imperialist feminist. She wouldn't call herself a feminist, but specific to the top classes in society, the capitalist classes.
Like the enslaved people rebellion in Haiti, the suffragettes' bombs, or the beheading of French monarchs. I'm just saying, we're very cute
Hannah, thank you for the 18 months.
these days.
More
Now,
women
this was
drone
supposed to be
pilots.
the end of the video, but then I realized that one layer was missing.
Okay, wait. This is the part that I was looking for as far as mysticism and its historical popularity within the far right. Pagan, particularly Nordic mysticism, is very popular. It takes many forms, from the Thulian paganism of the Nazis themselves to the esoteric Hitlerism of Savitri Devi's neo-Nazism and the Odinism of the white supremacist terror cell, the Order. New Age beliefs provide an alternative framework to justify categorization and hierarchies. Phil Jones of the progressive research group Autonomy describes far-right occultism as merely the path to ethno-nationalist superiority, cosmic violence to earthly tradition. As with Devi's mysticism, pagan and New Age beliefs serve to link the far right to wellness and conspiracy-minded spirituality movements, sometimes referred to with the term conspirituality, in a way that appeals to far-right womanhood. After all, in fascist thought architecture, the mystic is characterized as feminine, in contrast to masculine order and rationality. So this term conspirituality was coined by anthropologists Charlotte Ward and David Voas, and they summarize conspirituality as a broad politico-spiritual philosophy based on two core convictions. The first, which is traditional to conspiracy theory, the second that is rooted in the New Age. A secret group covertly controls or is trying to control the political and social order. And two, humanity is undergoing a paradigm shift in consciousness. So this is where you get like biblical Christian right figures. This is where you get kind of the New Age wellness, mystical, spiritual figures without being overtly Christian. And it's why I think we've seen a lot of rightward shifts in the New Age space. So if you are a person who in the past, maybe you've been in that digital content sphere of wellness influencers, I'm sure you've noticed a number of them over recent years spouting anti-vaccine shit, getting more and more right-wing coded, if not overtly political. Like you can get that sense more and more as they have leaned into the kind of conspiracism and spirituality elements, and then the combination of those. What is the book that you're reading? It's called Pink Pilled, and I'm having a conversation with the author of this book in 15 minutes. Time check. Spiritual equal disregarding science. Yeah. It's also corny too, because all those supposed pagan or fucking Thule and fucking Theosophists, etc., are all a modern invention. All their beliefs are stolen from all over. None of these groups can trace themselves back anywhere, and all their beliefs and everything is stolen from actual cultures. Yeah. Classic. But this is one way that gender differences, and therefore a belief in gender essentialism, and a belief that it is not a social construct gender roles are not a social construct. This has spun out from mystic essentialism. So gender differences that are explained by the divine. So you have people who are bioessentialists who are like, no, it's biology that determines these gender differences and therefore dictates gender roles in this world. And then you have those who are like, well, it's determined by the mystical. It's determined by it's divine. It's a higher power out there that is responsible for these differences. I notice there's a big anti-birth control sentiment on TikTok too, with young women opting to, yes. And that's why I'm having KYLIE CHEUNG to join this conversation, because she specifically writes about that. She is a writer who writes about gender and power and very much focuses on abortion rights or lack thereof. And she specifically has spent a lot of time in the anti-birth control TikTok space. And she wrote a piece on how celebrity smear campaigns are inspiring attacks on birth control. That this is that the weaponizing of pop culture news, which draws in a lot of people who are not specifically right-wing in their ideology, but are finding themselves now like preaching that birth control is evil and bad. This is kind of a double mindfuck, because I think a lot of white people go to these spaces in search of a feeling of culture that was stripped away due to white supremacy. WS is so normalized that they don't see that they never escape the trap at all. There's also a lot of white people who do feel like they are being blamed, even if they individually don't believe that they bear responsibility. It's kind of well, I as an individual haven't done anything here aside from being white. It's not like I had slaves. It's not like I have actively participated in racism and perpetuating racial hierarchy. And so then it's these like feelings of it's this discontent and this kind of, oh, well, I'm being blamed for something that I didn't even do. Sorry, I was born white. It's a defensiveness. Yes, there's a defensiveness that then pushes them into the arms of people who are like, hey, are you white? That's totally cool. You have nothing to be sorry for. You have nothing to be sorry for. And maybe it'll be people who are like, yes, white privilege exists. However, it's because we deserve it.
I need to talk to you about one last female public figure, a self-proclaimed common sense feminist who has done an incredible job at, one, making manosphere people listen to someone who call themselves a feminist without interrupting them every.
Caroline, do you think, wait, hold on. Oops, sorry, I did not mean to put you on. I did not mean to pull that. Caroline, do you think the average woman should be consuming red pill content? Obviously not with the goal of adopting it, but just see the language of the movement, be aware of the strategies they employ against women in the real world. Do I think the average woman should be consuming red pill content to be aware of? Not necessarily. No. I think what I want women to be aware of is pink pilling content. That's why I want to have this conversation, because I think there are plenty of women who hear the violent rhetoric from these red-pilled misogynists. And obviously, when we think of the manosphere, we think of people like Andrew Tate, and they are turned off from that, even though but that doesn't necessarily mean that they are they are automatically turned off from potentially being radicalized to the right. That's why there are all these different pipelines. That's why the funnel has gotten much wider because of the internet. There's a difference between awareness and consumption. Yeah. So I think it's important for people who are in the role of trying to educate and help people be aware of a lot of this content that is seemingly apolitical, but really isn't. And so they're reporting on it, they're talking about it. But it's to me, it's like if women are consuming red pill content, I don't think women being aware of red pill content is going to be necessarily shocking to them. It's like, oh, there are male supremacists who are monetizing or capitalizing off of that. Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. But more so, it's like, I want women who would obviously understand the nastiness of red pill content to be aware of how they can still be radicalized. They can still harbor bigoted beliefs and participate in their own continued oppression through the shit that they're consuming. So that could be celebrity news. That could be feminist content that's actually fascist feminist content. There's everything out there. What would you label the women that are on TikTok to absolutely hate all men? Women on TikTok, label the women that are on TikTok to absolutely hate all men. Traumatized women. What would you label the women that are on TikTok to hate all men? I would say women who are deeply traumatized. Wouldn't they be misandrous? Sure. But honestly, misandry doesn't really exist. Okay. There is no systematic oppression of men on the basis of their gender. It doesn't exist. It's not the same thing. Men who hate women versus women who hate men. And the thing is misogynists want you to believe that misandrists are the same, but on the other side. But misandry is not the same thing as misogyny, but for men. But misogynists will seize on misandry and go, this is the problem. Women are being conditioned to hate men because of evil feminists. And so I have to be a misogynist because we are being oppressed by these women.
Every 10 seconds.
Misandry does not kill. Misogyny does. Misandry is not systemic. It's not. It's not systematic or systemic oppression.
And 2, using intersectionality for conservative purposes. Now, this person is called Louise Perry. She has appeared on various podcasts, from Peterson's, Daughter and Dad, to Chris Williamson's, but also Ali Abdal's. Louise Perry is the author of The Case Against the Sexual Revolution, a new guide to sex in the 21st century. And she's really good at cultivating her ambiguity. By that I mean that many see her as a feminist. The fact that she supports several pro-family welfare measures, including the improvement of maternity leave, is proof of that. And even in the podcast...
Also, yeah, they complain about misandry and it's always them just complaining about the patriarchy. It's like both misogyny and misandry come from the patriarchy and are, it's a result of a patriarchal culture.
Episode with Michaela Peterson, she shared how cool it was that the conservative conference she was going to very soon would provide childcare, like feminist organizations used to do during their own conferences. Now, this is an interesting point of connection between a pro-family, supposedly right-wing...
Calling any man gay for showing emotions is pretty systemic, but it's not on the scales. Do you think Do you think calling men gay who exhibit feminine traits, do you think that comes from misandry, or do you think that's patriarchy? Because I will tell you that's patriarchy. Putting men in restrictive boxes per their gender is patriarchy. Homophobia rooted in misogyny, because as a man, to be feminine, to not be exhibiting hypermasculine traits, well, that's bad. Well, now you're gay. And if you're actually gay, well, that's bad too, because you're gay, because you are not doing as men should be doing in this world, which is having sex with women and reproducing.
And pro-social, supposedly left-wing political agenda that we need to be careful about. Because what Perry does...
Gay equals weak, weak equals not a man. Gay equals weak, weak equals woman, equals bad.
Is that she creates an intersection between class struggle, so having access to social benefits,
simple,
on the
beautiful
one hand,
explanation,
and feminism, having access to maternity benefits, on the other hand, to encourage the preservation of the nuclear family. So I feel like things are pretty clear now. Throughout this video, we looked at the many ways bourgeois feminism can turn into authoritarianism. It does so when it refuses to look at complex social dynamics, class or race, and replace it with essentialist assumptions. It does that as well because it relies on the individual as part of a family, and therefore put the responsibility on them or their parents to change their negative behavior, not caring a tiny bit about how their material conditions might impact that negative behavior. And finally, it does that because it co-opts feminist language and measures, left-wing language and measures to push for a return to the nuclear family. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. As always, the conversation continues in the comment section. Don't forget to like, to subscribe if it's not already done. See, I can be really violent when I hear that you've been watching my videos for a while and you're not even subscribed. I'm joking.
Alice is great. If you're not familiar with Alice Capel, she's awesome.
Obviously. A big thank you to my patrons for their support, and a special thank to top tier Patreons: James, Ojwal, Pablo, Patrick, Boris, Ria, Joey, Ivan, Remy, Trebizond, Lenny.
Classic never subscribed to anything. Classic, I don't support women. Classic, I don't support women. My God. How many times I've been like, oh, I love this person. I'm like, oh my God. I'm still, you know what? It's because I'm still new to YouTube, okay? I'm still learning how to subscribe. how to like and subscribe. Oh my God. Look, I just threw a like as well, okay? 4 years into YouTube. Well, that's fairly new, okay? All right, I'm going to hop on this Zoom call here. So we're going to continue the conversation. If you have not had enough, well, you're about to get even more. So let me pull up my Zoom. Oh my God. This is called activating the mind. brain hole activation. Yes. All right. Start. Okay, I'm gonna open this up. I have to start this, and then I go boom, and then I have to turn off my camera. Zoom, and then I go. I have to turn off. Wait a second. Full screen. this. I go deactivate. Okay. And then I go Zoom call. And now I can turn on my video. Yes. Okay, great. All right, everything is set up here. Okay. Why does that look weird? Transform. Fit to screen. Okay. Great. Kylie is here. I'm going to let my queen in. Trigger warning for Zoom. Trigger warning for Zoom. You know, I'm all about Zoom. Kylie.
Hey.
Hey, girl.
Hey, how's it going?
Oh, fabulous. We just spent an hour and a half talking about the things that we're going to talk about right now.
God, yay.
Yeah, I told people, I was like, if that wasn't enough for you, well, don't worry, because we're about to do more.
I'm so excited to connect with Lois.
Yeah, I'm excited to have this trio together because obviously the two of you are both journalists and authors working in the same world here. And honestly, I haven't really seen many others write about pink pilling, even use the term pink pilling. So the fact that you wrote a piece for your Substack, which was great, and tied in classic celebrity smear campaigns, which we talk about all the time. And then I found, I was trying to get, obviously it's like, I know about pink pilling and I talk about it on my own stream, but I was trying to find more literature, more reading on it. And that is how I came across Lois's book, which is great. But also I was like, damn, not a lot of people talking about this. Everybody talking about the manosphere. Everyone talking about men. Oh, these poor, these young, angry, disenfranchised, isolated, lonely men. I was like, what about women? What about women?
That's so true. No, I think especially like after the 2024 election, there was like all of this coverage of the manosphere, and like I think it was valuable like in its own way.
Sure.
For sure. But yeah, it was just interesting because it's like since 2022, 2021, that was kind of when I was starting to like cover, like notice these trends and like increasingly like anti-birth control content on like TikTok and other platforms, and how that like started to like segue people into like tradwife content and all of that. And I feel like that just was not really seen as like inherently political in the same way that the manosphere was, which was interesting. But yeah.
Yep, I hear that. Also, apparently Lois didn't get my Zoom link. My bad. I was like, I remember sending it at 2 a.m, but also maybe not. Oh shoot, I sent it to your email. Maybe it didn't go. Okay, I just linked it here. My bad.
Oh.
Look, I'm just a one-woman show over here, and sometimes maybe I do things, but I actually don't. I don't know. I streamed last night because usually I stream at night, but whenever I have conversations like this, I always do it in the morning because I know people have a more, it's a different schedule, I will say.
I'm like such a night owl. So.
Wait, are you?
Yeah.
Oh, good to know. Okay, wait, here's Lois.
Yay.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi. So sorry about that.
No, I'm sorry. I thought I sent the invite to your email around 2 a.m, but it's probably on me.
Oh no, sorry. I looked and I like searched your name and stuff, but maybe my email just like, I don't know, was being weird and blocked it. But
well, no worries, because we have you here now, and very excited to get this group together. And let me quickly introduce y'all to my audience here. So KYLIE Cheung, who I've had on before, we talked with her and Kat Tenbarge about the Chapel Roan smear campaign, and then related that to the broader issues of misogyny and the weaponizing of that on the internet. And KYLIE is an author and a journalist who has written 2 books on gender and power, A Women's Place and The Gaslit Diaries. And you also write a lot about abortion rights. And you wrote this piece, How Celebrity Smear Campaigns Are Inspiring Attacks on Birth Control. And in that piece on your Substack, you get into talking about the pink pill pipeline, which then led me to Lois's work. So this is Lois Shearing, everybody. And Lois is an author and a journalist, the author of By the Way, The Bisexual Guide to Life, and co-editor of It Ain't Over Till the Bisexual Speaks, an anthology of bisexual voices. And then your second book is this one here, Pink Pilled, which you can see all of my Post-it notes. And I really, really enjoyed this. It's very, very informative. And so I thought to gather you both here today to talk about pink pilling and to talk about not just the current issue with women being radicalized in spaces that are just not being reported on and being paid attention to in the same way as the manosphere, but also that this follows a history of women's deep involvement in far-right movements. You can't have fascism without women being participants in it, women who are participants in their own oppression, but often do so because they are white, and because they are white first and then women second. So obviously a lot of this conversation, when we refer to women, I think specifically referring to cisgender white women who have been the main architects here in women's involvement in fascism. So yeah, the way that I want to do this is honestly, let's just chat. I'll ask some questions here and there that I would love to hear both your answers on. But yeah, feel free to just jump in and share your knowledge on this subject. So I would love to start off by, I guess, asking how you both came to this term pink pilling. When was the first time that you maybe came across this, or even if not specifically the term pink pilling, your understanding of women being radicalized by, I guess, other women too. You know, there's the women being radicalized by other women being radicalized by men, but just women's radicalization on the internet and this term of pink pilling. So whoever wants to jump in first.
Yeah, I mean, I can just talk quickly because, yeah, I'm sure, Lois, you have a whole book about this. So
Oh
there'll be
yes.
a lot to say. But yeah, I think that the term itself is kind of on the newer side to me. But, since like 2021 and 2022, um, yeah, I've been reporting on reproductive rights at Jezebel, and that's kind of where I was at the time. And, I was just increasingly being exposed to like this trend of, increasingly like anti-birth control content. And a lot of times, there were very legitimate experiences wrapped up in that, where we all have different experiences with different birth control methods. And then, the healthcare system is such a nightmare to like navigate. And a lot of times those frustrations can then be redirected at like birth control instead of birth control, like more broadly, instead of like, what the real issues in play are. And so, yeah, I would just increasingly see all of these videos kind of like promoting like natural family planning methods, or just like people really getting into like their horrible IUD pain, which is like a valid
Yeah.
experience. And
Mm-hmm.
then, at the same time, IUDs work great for other people. And, there was just a lot of different misinformation and a lot of just different, very like anti-birth control content. And a lot of times that would then kind of become this pipeline into like going down like other alternative health stuff, and then like trad wife content and all of this that might seem like on its face like apolitical, and it might just seem like female lifestyle content in the same way that like celebrity news that you often see that often has like very misogynistic undertones,
Mm-hmm.
that's often seen as like apolitical and just like something that, you know, you'll just see in like female lifestyle content and whatnot. And so, you know, that's kind of how I think I was exposed to it through like my reporting on reproductive rights and seeing that, you know, like legislative attacks on birth control and abortion are very unpopular. But, you know, part of manufacturing consent to that is like by stigmatizing or like making people, you know, kind of have negative attitudes about birth control or think that birth control is unsafe. And so therefore they'll be more open to like restrictions on it. And yeah, that's kind of how I first started to look into some of this. But
Yeah, if I just can pick up from that,
Mhm.
I was so excited to be invited on this call with you, Kylie, because I'd actually read your Substack
oh,
before Caroline messaged me and asked me if I'd be involved, and I thought it was so
Oh my
fantastic
God, love the
about these like
connections.
narratives around, yeah, all of these like narratives around just like celebrity birth control stories, and it's really worrying. But for me, so I actually originally didn't want to call the book Pink Pilled.
Interesting. How
um,
come?
when I pitched the manuscript, I pitched it under the name Femoids,
Okay.
which is obviously what the far right like call
Yeah.
women, or like a
Yeah.
lot of like the alt-right boys call women. And it was actually my editor at Manchester University Press who suggested calling it Pink Pilled. Because she thought it was going to be a more marketable and recognizable term, and she was so right. um, but at the
Yeah.
time when I was writing it, so obviously publishing is like a really slow beast. I started writing this book in 2022, I think, and the term pink pilled was not really that common at that point. It was being used by this really small corner of what we would now maybe call the femosphere. It was being used as like pink pill dating.
So it was being used by women who were perpetuating this kind of far right or far right coded ideology in the same way I think that red pilling is it's a term that's used by the ones who are doing it. It's like it's their term. It's not being attributed to them from outside forces.
Yes, absolutely. And so they were kind of the pink pill dating community at that time was very adjacent to like the sprinkle dating stuff and the like high value dating community, and it was kind of like an offshoot of red pill dating, where they would talk about, you know, dating in this very gamified way. They would talk about like the matrix of dating. They would talk about needing to be like a high value woman in order to attract a high value man, like it's very heterosexual.
Mm-hmm.
um and so they would refer to themselves as being pink pilled because they had seen through this matrix of dating, and had taken the pink pill and were like learning all these dating tricks. And so I was worried that, you know, this was like a really small and quite niche community, who were using the term for themselves. But at the time, I wasn't really seeing the women of the far right using pink pilling in the way that like red pill is used more generally.
Mm-hmm.
And like black pill is also used a little bit by those communities. But in the last couple of years, I've seen it being used more and more to talk specifically about this like lifestyle content pipeline, specifically around like birth control, abortion, wellness.
Mm-hmm.
I think the term has gained like a lot of mainstream popularity like in the last couple of years.
I think also that's reflective of the funnel widening. It seems as if there's more and more avenues to radicalization via the internet than there were before. It's it's basically like a buffet. Whatever you want is available. Whether you are a woman who calls herself a feminist but is a racial purist. Okay, so there's a group for you out there, and I know you talked about that group in your book. women who want kind of the more mysticism, biblical coded, Christian, spiritual. There's that out there. Women who are more militant, women who don't want things to be overtly political, but want to be in a space that is encouraging them in their femininity, that is telling them it's okay. And it's not just okay, but it's good to embrace their roles as wives and mothers. So it does really feel like this funnel is so wide and is getting wider everywhere I look. There seems to be content and digital spaces that are super right wing, whether on the surface or not. And I will say, I'm not a person who, despite being a millennial who's like on Facebook and MySpace, I was not really tapped into the internet in the way that I am now that I've been streaming for a couple years. So I have really become aware of how right wing the internet is and how much content, especially in the realm that I do commentary in, pop culture, celebrity news, how much of it is super, super right wing and is whether it is whether people are aware of it or not.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think that what's so insidious is that a lot of times, like so many people, so many even like young women or women my age or anything like that, will just, it's so natural for them to like find themselves participating in a smear campaign or perpetuating it.
Mm-hmm.
And, I don't think that many of the people who do that are seeing themselves as like conservatives or like pushing conservative or misogynistic propaganda. And it's so interesting. I think I like lost my train of thought, but
You're just so overwhelmed by by all of it.
um, no, but yeah, and like I think that that's yeah, I that kind of is like my understanding of like pink pilling and like birth control and like a lot of like yeah, I think that it's just very insidious where in a lot of cases people don't know that they're like pushing content that, is contributing to,
Mm-hmm.
you know, this policy goal of banning birth control. Or I don't think that, a lot of people who might just see TikToks of like, oh, Chapel Roan is being rude. And like, I don't think that they think that they're participating in like something like akin to like a historic witch hunt or something like that. And like, I think the other thing is that like, I think there's been some really great reporting about this, how like, like a lot of these right-wing influencers or female lifestyle influencers, you might find no connection between them on the surface, but then, they all have TikToks with like the same message that's like, isn't it suspicious that like IVF started or like people started using IVF like during this period and now, or no, sorry, a lot of women started using birth control or hormonal birth control in this period, and then now there's an entire generation of women who need IVF or something and just
Right.
kind of pushing this weird conspiracy theory and like it's all the same and it's clearly astroturfed like in the same way
Right.
that
It feels scripted.
yeah yeah exactly and it's
Uh,
like yeah no it's very similar to like in your like your coverage of like the Blake Lively stuff and how like a lot of these messages are exactly the same. A lot of them are from bots or a lot of them are like from influencers who might have been put up to this and then like 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 just the fact that we have a very misogynistic public will like take it from there, it seems.
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes me think of the Amber Heard stuff a couple of years
Oh,
ago
of
and how
course.
like
Yeah.
scripted and like bot fueled that was. And like I was writing the book at the time when that happened and it didn't end up going anywhere, but was looking into like how much of a pipeline is this of like this undermining of survivors' stories, this like witch hunt against women. Like it felt very astroturfed and very scripted, and I wouldn't be surprised if in like a few years time we get some really good like reporting and documentaries and research around like how intentional was that messaging around that.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, we
Oh,
already
God.
we already know that there were bot farms that were employed. There was a manufactured smear campaign in place even before the 2022 trial, back when Johnny Depp had sued The Sun for calling him a wife beater. And he had his PR team, he had his mega fans because Amber Heard ended up being a witness for the Sun. They called her in to testify to the many, many counts of domestic abuse that she had alleged. And so we do know, prior to the 2022 defamation case even taking place, that was all already there. And hashtag Johnny, free Johnny Depp, all that already existed prior to 2022. And I think, as far as that being a pipeline, it's one that we still don't fully understand the consequences of. I agree that I would love to have even more reporting on this, more people paying attention to what a catalyst it was. I know for a fact that one of the biggest streamers on this platform, on Twitch, who is now a political commentator, he's a total right-wing bigoted piece of shit, says some of those vile things you'll ever hear. That was his way in to seeing the value, the opportunity in doing this type of commentary, because he covered the Heard Depp trial as entertainment and participated in the endless smears, in basically just turning Amber into a meme, and he was rewarded for it. The viewership was crazy. There were so many people who were not even explicitly right wing, who were all saying the exact same things. And so I always point that out to people in my audience who I need to stress the understanding of what a massive cultural and political catalyst that was. And I'm curious, Lois, I'm curious because, and also for you, Kylie, when that was happening, I was seeing it in the real world because I was not on TikTok, I was not on YouTube. I'm obviously aware of how massive the train of anti-Amber Heard content was. But my understanding of it first being a problem was how people in my life were saying, and I was like, wait, what? You believe Johnny Depp? And then the second that I would offer a counter, any factual info that they just simply weren't aware of, they'd be like, damn, I've not heard a single person from your perspective. And that's what started to tune me into the fact that this was very, very, very one-sided. But I'm curious for you both, was this something that you had not seen before as far as the scope and the scale? Or did this feel like, oh, we're still in Gamergate hell?
Oh, go ahead, Lois.
Oh, thank you. I think for me, I had a really weird experience because at the time I used to run something called the Bi Survivors Network, which was like a support group for bi people and pan people, etc., who had experienced like sexual and domestic violence. And I would have people messaging the Bi Survivors Network telling me that we needed to speak out against Amber Heard and that we needed to talk more about,
Oh my God.
what was the term they were using at the time? Like
Mutual
reciprocal
abuse?
Mutual abuse.
Mutual
Thank you.
abuse.
That we needed to talk about mutual abuse and that we needed to talk about how like Johnny Depp was the victim here and blah, blah, blah. And like people that I trusted within the survivor support space, like people I'd worked with in this space, kind of messaging me about that. And whenever I would push back, and particularly when I would push back and be like, well, Amber Heard is an openly bisexual woman who has been abused by a heterosexual man. Like a lot of what we were talking about at the time as the Bi Survivors Network was like that dynamic that so often plays out where bi women come out in their relationship and then experience domestic abuse from their heterosexual male partners. And it was just so shocking to me that these people who I trusted within the survivor space, who I'd worked with before, had like so quickly swallowed this narrative and taken the side of this like very powerful older heterosexual man. And obviously, there can be, your identity is not always a protective factor. Like men can experience intimate partner violence and straight men can experience that. but yeah, it was just really shocking to me to experience that so quickly within that space.
Yeah, I think that when I look back, it was such a minefield because I think that, it was there were so many people like in my life or like who or peripherally in my life who I would otherwise agree with most things on, or like people who are otherwise quite liberal or progressive.
Mm-hmm.
But, it was just very interesting because I think that what Johnny Depp's side was really skilled at was kind of co-opting like this narrative of social justice, co-opting this
Mm-hmm.
narrative of feminism so that people who, like ideologically, like I would typically agree with, did see that as like the
Mm-hmm.
progressive or feminist side. Like to your point, Lois, with like what you were experiencing with that group. And like, yeah, I think that they just did so, yeah, really well at that. And like, a big part of that is just like Darvo on this like larger scale, or like deny, attack, reverse victim offender. And, I think that yes, it's like a very common dynamic like within abuse. And then I think that it also is like a common dynamic within like I don't know, within like cultural and political conversations as well. And, I think that it was so interesting also. Like I think that they really just flooded the zone and like, it seemed and like, yeah, I'm sure a good part of that was organic. And like it is so hard to like, I think Kat has talked about this a lot, but it's so hard at some point to decipher at this stage of where we are in the internet, like what is like organic and like what is
Yeah.
astroturf. I think there was such this like blend that became just kind of like indiscernible from each other because yes, like there is just so much misogyny and people love to participate in like this public orgy of misogyny. And at the same time, like a good part of that, like we do know that his lawyer, I think Kat talked about this, like was involved in like getting influencers involved and feeding them talking points and like getting that started.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
I feel as if I look back on the Heard Depp case as a sign that as an indicator that everyone is capable of participating in and propagating far right ideology that is rooted in the abuse of women, that is anti-feminist, that is frankly, it's anti-women. And I think that was a sign that even if you ascribe to progressive politics and think that you are immune to that and there's no way that you could fall for something like that and be a participant in it, actually that's not the case. And I'm curious if I'm curious how that informed your book, Lois, as you were writing it in the midst of this. If it made you feel even I don't know, if it made you feel even more invested in wanting to examine these spaces in the hope that we can begin to dismantle them, or if if you just became more depressed or like, holy shit, there's too much to fight. Where do we even begin?
Yeah, oh my goodness. A question I got asked so much while writing the book, because part of my process was that I kind of like infiltrated in some ways, like a lot of
Mm-hmm.
pink pill spaces, like Telegram channels, places like that, and spent a lot of time just like lurking in these communities and watching how these women like talk to each other and talk to the men in these communities. And so I got asked quite a lot, like, was I ever worried that I would get radicalized and go down one of these pipelines? And I can kind of see why I was being asked that. But like, the more I was working on the book, the more I was like, no, I've been radicalized like the other way. I think we maybe need
Mm-hmm.
to burn down the YouTube headquarters.
Okay. All
Um,
right.
I
I'm
don't think
for
that
it.
anymore, and that's not an actionable threat. Uh,
It's okay. I make even worse on stream all the time. So you're
Great.
good.
Um, but yeah, I've kind of readjusted my relationship with the internet, and since the book, I think a really great book, and person who helped me do that was Legacy Russell, who wrote an incredible book called Glitch Feminism, and she has a new book out called Black Meme, which is really amazing. She writes about like how the internet can be used as a space for progressive politics and progressive shifts in culture, and like this idea of like occupying the internet. She's a fantastic writer. I highly recommend reading her work. But yeah, I definitely kind of came away from the process just feeling so overwhelmed by, like you said, this realization that the internet is a far more right-wing place than I'd ever conceived of it
Yeah.
being. And even just looking back through the history of the internet and how, like, you know, this technology goes back to being military technology. The internet was kind of conceived of in World War II as part of like the code breaker program, and then it's kind of like, you know, developed within a military space. And so we're building on what is essentially military equipment and have like democratized it to some degree, but actually like it's very swiftly becoming an undemocratic place. You know, we exist on like a platform internet now, and those platforms are owned by like the same 5 guys, and all of those guys
Are
have been
terrible. Yeah.
radicalized. Yeah. But even if we look back, like Facebook started life as a platform to rate how hot women are. Like it
Yeah.
started as a place to degrade women
Yeah.
and has just like continued to be a space in which women are rated and degraded and abused. But also has been a space in which we've pushed forward feminism so much. Like I think the Me Too movement wouldn't have happened without social media. And so I do have this really like fraught relationship to what the internet is and how we can use it that feels very complicated.
I feel that. I do. And I would love to I would love to get into talking about kind of the main players here in, I guess, what we'll call the womanosphere, the pink pillars, because there is, as I said previously, there's something for everyone. They don't all look the same. They don't all sound the same. I primarily talk about Candace Owens because I kind of have tried to position myself as the antithesis to Candace Owens, the anti Candace Owens here on Twitch, in that I attack politics. I approach trying to spread leftist ideology through pop culture coverage, whereas Candace is on the other side, and she's very, very upfront with the fact that she rebranded to be a pop culture commentator. So I frequently talk about her, and also she has such a massive audience, and a lot of people I know who listen to Candace who don't know that she's a white supremacist. They don't know that she is super, super far right. They just think that she's a woman who talks about celebrities. So I would like to get into get into talking about who kind of the main players are here, and also the different subgenres of this kind of content. And then I would also like to discuss, why is this not being discussed? Why are we some of the few out there who are specifically approaching a conversation on radicalization, on internet specific radicalization, but how it is targeting women, how it is propagated by women?
Yeah, I mean, I can just talk a bit first about like, you know, what I write about Candace Owens in, you know, the article I had on like the pink pill pipeline and birth control, because no, to your point, it's so interesting because like I think in 2024, Taylor Lorenz had this article kind of profiling, you know, Candace Owens' media company, which, you know, included like a fitness app for like new mothers or pregnant women. And, you know, I think like a podcast on pop culture and like all of these other things. And I think like a book club. And it was like,
Just has it all.
Yeah, it's just like this catch-all, like cultural, I don't know, like it is just like this massive foray into pop culture and like very seemingly apolitical content. And then once you're kind of lured in, and like if you don't have this background and knowing about her time at the Daily Wire, or if you don't know what the Daily Wire is, then you might just think you're consuming, pop culture content. And then next it's like you're on this pipeline where you'll see her tweets about like, you know, women's suffrage, nothing good came from that. Or like
Mm-hmm.
her YouTube videos where, again, it kind of goes back to like in some ways co-opting progressive language when you see some of her videos about birth control, because, she will reference kind of this like spotty or like this darker history of birth control that does involve like experiments on like women of color and like Puerto Rican women, and
Mm-hmm.
all of these very like important parts of this history, but taking to this context that then kind of attacks the right to birth control today. And it isn't really out of obviously concern for like social justice, but just about kind of convincing an audience of people who otherwise would support birth control. But yeah, all to say, she's really like, to your point, like created like this kind of pipeline that will, like, if you're not aware of like her history or like, her insane views, like you're just gonna kind of get like taken in that direction over time.
And I think it's frustrating because obviously a lot of leftists and people in the political commentary sphere are aware of Candace. They talk about her all the time. In some regards, they are agreeing with her because when she started to morph her anti-Semitism into, "Ooh, no, I oppose Israel," then it was like, Candace is speaking the truth here. Anyway, that's a whole other topic. But I don't think they're connecting her role in this in this womanosphere, in this larger, broader culture that is specifically uh, with the agenda of right-wing radicalization through disguising it. And that's where the rebrand comes into play. That's where like her being pop culture celeb news commentator now comes into play. And I get frustrated with leftists who don't talk about this pipeline here, who aren't making the connection that Candace Owens is not just an individual successful commentator on the internet who, does politics, does pop culture. She's a part of this larger web. And in 2017, during the Me Too movement, she stated her express intent to dismantle the Me Too movement. So she's been clear in what her agenda is. And anyway, yeah, it's just frustrating to me that she and what she does is not examined in this framework of the right-wing radicalization of women by women.
Yeah, I think, sorry, like one more thing I would say going off of that is just that, like, I think a lot of this seems apolitical, and a lot of this is like, and a lot of that is part of like the right-wing strategy of like being aware of how unpopular their policy agenda is. Like on its face, like all of these things like are widely unpopular. And so, what they're trying to do, because like, yeah, I think young people, especially, like a lot of their agenda is obviously unpopular with. They're kind of trying to change that by like taking ownership of like culture and media in like these insidious ways.
Yeah, and I think with Candace Owens, like she is so deep in the source that Nigel Farage attended her wedding.
Oh my
Um,
God.
yeah. So Nigel Farage, she's married to the guy who was like the co-founder or founder of Turning Point UK when they tried to
Mhm.
start one here. If my stupid accent hasn't given away that I'm British. Um, and yeah, Nigel Farage, who is the current leader of Reform, which is like the biggest far right party in the UK right now, like rapidly gaining popularity. He was at their wedding. They had like a really fancy wedding in the British countryside. And so she has always been like really deeply embedded in this sphere, like you said, of like transatlantic far right politics. And I think like I am seeing an increasing amount of like anti-birth control, anti-abortion rhetoric being pushed by the Reform Party and like astroturfed by the Reform Party. Like the discussion around abortion and birth control is very different here to what it is in the States. Like it has been really not a discussion for like the last couple of decades. It's been pretty settled. And then I would say in the last like 5 to 10 years or so, there have been these little like mounting stories about abortion, about birth control happening in our media. And so much of it, I think, is coming from places like Citizen Go, where they've had so much success in the US and now they're recreating this here. And she is very much a part of that story, like across both sides of the Atlantic. But like you said, she gets away with being seen as apolitical. And I think part of that is just straight up misogyny.
Yeah.
Like when women talk about the
funny enough, right?
Yeah, right.
It all comes back to that.
Yeah, when women talk about things that matter to their lives, it's not seen as political. It's seen as like silly, girly lifestyle content. And that's why like Evie has been so successful. Evie magazine.
God, I feel like I see Evie magazine pieces pop up all the time. I have seen people share little blurbs or whatever from Evie, and they are not people who are explicitly right wing. And I think they probably obviously have a lot of money that they can spend on marketing. And that's why also we're seeing them everywhere. I wanted to ask you, Lois, per the chart that you include in your book that kind of breaks down the different categories and subcategories of I think it's yes, it's the Tradwife chart. I'm very curious where if you can explain that first of all, and then talk about where you think Candace Owens falls on that.
Yes, I'm doing a Russell Brand right now in that I have my book in my lap and I'm trying to quickly
and you're like
I'm trying to quickly
hold on. This is the spiritual passage that speaks to me the most. Hold on, I also have the book.
It'd be great if I could demonstrate. But yeah, so this obviously is not a chart that I made, and I will be able to tell you in 1 second. The fantastic, Sophia Skies is one of the people. I don't really know if this is going to focus. The amazing researcher who this chart is from, but it was kind of like the 3 main subcategories of tradwives, and then like the kind of categories below that of where they fall into. So they broke it down into like conservative right tradwives, alt-right tradwives, and alt-right tradwives. I think important context here is that the term tradwife is like a lot older than a lot of people seem to think it is. Like it's been around since at least 2014, 2015.
Okay.
And very much like started in that alt-right ecosphere, like digisphere. People like Mrs. Midwest were calling themselves tradwives. Like Lauren Southern was using the term tradwife.
Which is so funny because she was not married,
and
didn't have kids.
No.
And that was one reason that she stepped away, because she was being hounded so much from her misogynistic viewers that she was unmarried and childless. Anyway, back to what you were talking about.
And same as Mrs. Midwest, whose name is Caitlin Huberman, I think. She wasn't married when she was making this content, and she was being kind of sketchy about whether or not she had kids, because she didn't have kids.
Right.
Like the timeline of when she had children is really hard to pin down, because she was intentionally very like obfuscating of when she had kids. Anyway, so the alt-right kind of birthed this term. But then there's also the kind of like conservative tradwives, who is where a lot of like the religious tradwives might fall into. So you'd have like the evangelical Christians, you'd have the Mormons, and like a lot of this tradwife ideology is drawn from evangelicalism and Mormonism. Also, the Mormon Church like funded so much of this content.
There are so many Mormon influencers. That's another thing that I have come to discover on the internet. And it obviously makes sense too that a lot of the origins of anti-birth control content is coming from this biblical, super Christian Mormon side of conservatism. But now it's expanded, and obviously a lot of people who are pushing this anti-birth control stuff are not necessarily staunch Christians or Mormons.
Yeah, absolutely. I while writing the book, I think nearly got broken up with by the girl I was seeing at the time because I would not stop talking about what I was calling the Mormon internet theory of just like, I think the Mormons made the internet, and she was like, you have to shut up.
She's like, okay, the first 10 times I was with you, and now I cannot hear this anymore.
Right now.
You know what? I would say I'm buying it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just the Mormons are so deep in the trad wife stuff. But yeah, there's also within kind of the trad wife movement, like militia trad wives. So these would maybe be the wives of like border patrol agents in the US around. It's more militant, right? It's more like we need to hunker down, we need to like be prepping. There's also like prepper trad wives, and those two groups kind of overlap quite a lot. And then you have more sort of like, yeah, women's lifestyle trad wife content creators who I think have like survivorship bias, are the ones who've like lasted. So those would be like Ballerina Farm, maybe Nara Smith, although I know she really doesn't like being called a trad wife, but I would
she
call her one.
is. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
she is, but she's one of those trad wives who's obviously a businesswoman. The irony with the trad wives pushing this lifestyle of homemaker, of, you know, mommy and wife, while being incredibly successful millionaires, business gals.
And of course, Lucky Blue, her husband, being a Mormon.
Yeah. Yep.
So again, there's like Mormon money behind some of this.
Yeah, I don't know if you've seen like the Heritage Foundation, one of their researchers, Emma Waters, she had a new book come out this year, and I think she like advocates for this thing called a side hustle trad wife or something, where like you can like you're like a trad wife, but like you could have like an Etsy business or a part-time job or something like that. And
Yeah.
like as long as like your family or like your husband and your kids like come first,
First, the priorities are there. I wonder if that gets into the, I wonder if that then taps into the MLM scheme that is, that is essentially getting stay-at-home mothers to believe that they can be content creators and make this money on the side while still prioritizing their husbands and children. And the way to do that is to buy this program from another mommy who is a success story, and then it just ropes them in. And it's like, you're content creators, but doing what? What content are you doing? You're just you're just saying you're a content creator anyway. I know Taylor Lorenz did a video on the new MLM scheme in the TikTok world of pitching being a content creator to, and so it's something that you may notice if you see, if you follow anyone who is like, this is something I've noticed with friends of mine in their 30s who are stay-at-home moms who start posting content, but there's really not a purpose to it. It's very, there's a lot of sameness to it. It's a lot of like, a day in the life of being a mom. I'm so tired. Where it's trying to be relatable, but it's just really not, there's no substance there. And I'm like, oh no, that's somebody who's probably bought one of these TikTok programs and has been sold this idea that they can become a successful content creator in 2 weeks and be making thousands of dollars as a side hustle. Yeah.
Annoyingly, I can't remember who it was who made this criticism, but it was so fantastic, and I will try and find it. But it was about kind of like TikTok creators and influencers are a kind of type of small business owner. They're sole traders. They are part of this like petit bourgeois class. where they don't own the means of any production, but they are like not workers in the kind of traditional Marxist setup sense. And that the like trad wife side hustle fits so well into that mindset of you are a small business person, you feel aggrieved by kind of taxes and those kind of things that you have to pay on being a small business, and you feel like you have this investment in capitalism when actually you are still being like repressed by the actual bourgeois class because you don't have any capital. And that, you know, trad wives fit so well into that, in that they are trying to turn themselves into these small businesses. They are trying to turn their whole life, they're trying to turn womanhood into a small business that they can then sell to other people. And that fits really nicely with this like the economy of influencers. You know what? It might have been Taylor Lorenz who wrote that, but I need to look into that.
Probably a good guess. She is one of the most she's one of the most knowledgeable when it comes to literally everything happening on the internet from its inception. So if there's a trend, if there was a specific time period on the internet, I'm sure Taylor has written about it. So who are some of the other, we talked about Candace Owens, we talked about Lauren Southern, who you have a whole section in the book about Lauren. I know that Lauren has in recent times moved away from the manosphere. She's not anti-MAGA. It's not as if she's a leftist communist card carrying queen out here, but she has moved away from the manosphere, which she claims destroyed her, that they turned on her, that they were so vicious to her. But she's still promoting right-wing beliefs, right? Like, isn't she still out here doing that? To my understanding, sometimes I get all the Laurens and the Lauras confused. There's so many Laurens and Lauras who are prominent right-wing figures.
Yeah, Laura Loomer is like my sleep paralysis demon.
Oh God!
Like, anywhere I look, she's
nightmare,
there.
nightmare. I know. And then there's also Lauren Chen, who unfortunately is a tokenized Asian woman who is so horrific. I hate her so much because I, as an Asian woman, see a lot of the tactics that she pulls and how she leans into the fetishizing of Asian women and kind of the history of there's just so much there with Asian women being colonized and fetishized and aligning with white supremacists because of model minority myth, because of their, I don't know, their proximity to whiteness, believing that it'll give them power over like Black people. So she's one as well. So my perception of where I see the biggest radicalizing pipeline is the trad wife world. I would say kind of broadly lifestyle type of content that's very trad wife. But I would say also celebrity news. That is something that, and maybe I'm particularly tuned into that because of how often I'm trying to counter smear campaigns and commentary involving celebrities that's super misogynistic. But it seems to me that that is a really big part of the funnel here. So curious how you all either what you perceive or what you have found through your reporting.
Yeah, KYLIE, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, because I think for me, one of the really big pipelines I'm seeing emerging is around like the memification of ovulating and like menstrual cycles and like hormones and like women's hormones. And you know, this idea of like, oh, I'm in my luteal phase, so I can't lift weights today. And like, if you had said that to a woman 5 years ago, I feel
What
like
the hell does that mean?
I don't even know what a luteal phase is.
What
Should
is
I
that?
know?
Yeah, should we know what that is?
No, but it's like I know exactly what you're saying, but I hadn't really been thinking about it until now. But it was like last summer, like Lord, who is definitely not right wing, she's definitely very like, yeah, definitely not. But it's like
Yeah.
he was talking about stuff about like how she went off birth control and like how it felt like better than like drugs to like be ovulating. And it was
Hmm.
just like very like I don't think she meant it herself in any kind of way, but she'd clearly accidentally tapped into like I don't know, these like spheres of like the alt health spheres of the internet that are inherently kind of, I don't know, building the pipeline for us to like be against things like birth control and that kind of thing in like this very granola-y way.
It's just the whole birth control thing is so tough because there are legitimate bad experiences that people have had with birth control. I have had bad experiences with birth control. It's not one size fits all. You have to you have to figure out what works for you. And in some cases, birth control in any form does not mix well with someone's system. But it's the same thing where a lot of times it's not like it's totally unfounded, but then people just get so spun off course. This it's like Black women who have historically been marginalized, especially in the healthcare system. The maternity rates being or mortality rates being higher for Black women. Just all the medical racism they and their children have dealt with, which then can push them into the anti-vax sphere, right? Like I understand that this is something that is not unfounded. These are real experiences people have had, but it's being seized on by people who should not be talking in any regard about these kinds of things.
Absolutely.
And I think what the far right has been so successful in doing with both the birth control stuff and the trad wife stuff is creating these false dichotomies where they're taking like real pain points that women have. Like one of the biggest in like academic literature, it's called like a catalyst event, but in colloquial terms, we would call it like a red pill moment, right? Like
Mhm.
the most common like red pill experiences I saw women having in my research was experiencing medical misogyny, particularly like traumatic births, traumatic experiences with birth control, things like that. And the far right has been so successful in setting up these false dichotomies of like the economy sucks. It's really hard to work right now, particularly post COVID, where like so many more women than men were pushed into precarious gig work during the
Mhm.
COVID-19 pandemic and picking up so much more domestic labor.
Mhm.
Of creating this dichotomy of like, well, you can either go to work and then come home and do the second shift, or you can just be doing domestic labor and like, you know, being a trad wife. There was never this conversation around like, what does it mean to create a more equal division of labor? What does it mean to be demanding better economic policies for women, right? What does it mean to be asking for like better childcare? And they're doing the same thing with birth control of creating this false dichotomy of like birth control is shitty and under researched, so just come off it. Don't take it anymore. Be
Right.
natural. And not, you know, asking what does it mean for women to demand better research into our health experiences? What does it mean to ask for like better funding for birth control? And yeah, they've been so successful in kind of setting up these really memeified like this or that conversations around birth control, around work, around like all of these different things. And I'm seeing that so much more with the birth control conversation and the abortion conversation.
Mm-hmm. It also ties into the propaganda around how feminism is the reason that young men are failing, but also the reason that women are suffering, because feminism essentially, the way that they propagate it is like, and it's obviously this is where the not entirely unfounded feelings come in, where yes, capitalist feminism, neoliberal feminism, the kind that people like Hillary Clinton have advocated, it absolutely is not real feminism. It absolutely continues to harm women, working class women and working class men. But the way that feminism as kind of a catch-all term is the big bad here. And so for women, they are like, wait a sec. So I have to provide domestic labor for free because that's how it works in this world, but then also work outside the home because this is what feminism dictates. And then also if I have kids, I have to do all of these things. If I don't have kids, and it then I think makes the option, the return to domestic life as the only life, as being a wife and a mother, as having children, as rejecting birth control, as rejecting feminism, right? They equate birth control with feminism as the as very tantalizing, as it's very it seems like the solution for, I think, a lot of these women.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it draws on like a very fair like critique of like capitalism and then sells you this thing that is not the solution at all, which is like trading in a lot of social and political power as like supposed
Mhm.
the solution to that. But yeah, I do have to hop off, but this was such a
Yeah,
great
I
conversation.
know. I feel like we just started to tap in because there is so much here. The last thing,
Yeah.
obviously, before I have you promote is, um, I think wanting people to understand here that the reason we don't talk about women who are affected by the misogyny of the manosphere, women who are being radicalized, who are being pink pilled, women who are being highlighted and uplifted because they are playing this role of being in these far right movements, which historically they have been. I think understanding that it's also misogyny that is causing us to ignore all of this, which is why it's often women or gender fluid folks who are the ones writing on this topic. It's not men. It's not men who are reporting on this. I've shared this before on stream, but I had like 5 different journalists from a variety of publications reach out to me and want to talk about the manosphere, want to talk about men being radicalized. And every time I would say, hey, I would like to talk about women. I would like to talk about what's happening to women, how women are participants in this, the role they're playing. No interest whatsoever. So I don't know if you have any last thoughts on that before I have you share where we can find you and how we can support.
Yeah, no, oh my God, that's so frustrating to hear. And, I think that goes back to like what we've been talking about in this conversation of just like, I guess like what's important to women not being seen as political, even when, sometimes that might be to the advantage of someone like Candace Owens in this insidious way. It kind of is just rooted as, this is just lifestyle content, even
Mm-hmm.
when it very much is steering young women toward like this, yeah, toward this like right-wing political ideology. But yeah, you can just find me as Kylie T. Chung on Twitter/X, Blue Sky, Instagram, and yeah.
Yeah, but we have the links there. Thank you so much. Whoever, probably Katie who posted them. Have the links to your Substack, your Twitter, your website. And then Lois, it was such a pleasure. I know that I know there's so much more in the book, obviously, that we can't get into in 1 hour long conversation, but I really do really do encourage people to read Kylie's work and also this book on pink pilling, which is very thorough. It's very thorough. It's highly informative. But is there anything else you would like to share or any final thoughts? Final thoughts.
Yeah. Me or Kylie?
Oh, go ahead. Yeah, I said final thoughts like it's so dramatic. The last thing that you will ever say on this matter.
Oh my God, I wish it was. Yeah, I mean, thank you so much for having me. I would love to come back and chat
Oh,
to you again about this
yes.
at
Would
any
love to have you
time.
on again.
Yeah, please, like, you can find my book most places, not on Amazon, please. If it's the choice between buying it on Amazon, email me and I'll just send you a PDF. Don't support them.
Yeah, remember y'all, there are other places to buy books that are not Amazon.
Yeah, and you can find me on Substack. I think weirdly my name on Substack is Low Faith. It's stuck between my two names at the moment. Um, and yeah, thank you so much for talking about the book. I think, like you said, it is so deeply embedded in misogyny that we don't talk about this. I mean, in her book, Sisters in Hate, which is fantastic, Siwa Darby talks about the like women are wonderful effect, this like halo we
Mm-hmm.
put around, particularly white women, to erase kind of like the harm that white women do and the way in which we see white women as like this bastion of virtue. And that has been such a successful tactic that the far right have used in mainstreaming that ideology, in like having white women in particular say these things, promote this ideology in a way that makes it feel so much softer and less threatening. And like
Mm-hmm.
if we look at Europe, that has been really successful in like party politics. In Italy, in like the Netherlands, there have been women fronting far right parties and really leaning into this idea of like motherhood and nation in a way that has really sanitized these politics. And yeah, the far right is recreating that playbook with birth control and with abortion, and here in the UK, particularly with transphobia.
Yeah. Yeah.
A
Well,
really scary way.
from New York to the UK to Los Angeles, all of us are here trying to push back against this. So we're just gonna keep going, and it's wonderful that we were all able to connect. So thank you both for coming on, and I appreciate what you do, and I'm so glad that I could introduce people to both of y'all. So I will see you next time, and thanks again. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you, Caroline.
See y'all later. Bye.
This is lovely. Bye. Thank you.
Okay, I am going to activate this. Oh God, I feel like I could have just talked for hours. I always want to be cognizant. I always want to be cognizant that even though I will talk about something for hours on stream, people are busy. They are busy. We were just starting to hit flow state. I know there's so much to get into that we just scratched the surface of, but I hope it was informative. I hope that you enjoyed the conversation. I'm not kidding you that there are far fewer people who are writing on this subject and from this perspective and also personal experience than there is in the world of the manosphere, which I don't think should be surprising at all, but it's why I'm trying to bring attention. I'm trying to like center this because it's just being lost in the conversation. Hogan, thank you so much for the gifted sub. Yes, thank you for supporting that. Thank you for participating. And I definitely would love to have Lois on again. I obviously Kylie as well, but I've had Kylie on. So, feel confident she'll come back. But it was good to hear that Lois would love to come back because there's so much too that I wanted to get in on, specifically UK politics and the rise of fascism in the UK. A lot of what's specific to the UK, I would say, is gender essential, like anti-trans turf shit out there. It's very much turf island over in the UK, and I think that has been a big rallying point for people turning to the right in the UK, a la J.K. Rowling, and the attacks on migrants, the attacks on trans rights is a big radicalizing point over in the UK. Thank you so much for facilitating this wonderful and important conversation. Yay. You're welcome. Thank you for being a part of it. I know that the morning streams are off schedule and not usually how we do things, but every once in a while we throw it in there because this is when I have these kinds of conversations. Yeah, I love what you do for women. Thank you so much. I am trying. I am trying, so please keep supporting. Please support the stream if you can subscribe. It helps. If you can watch the stream, that's what I need. If you can share this, if you can share my content, because otherwise it's like it's so hard. It's so hard, and as I've said, unfortunately, misogyny is something that you can rise in the ranks of on the right. If you are a woman, if you are a woman of color, leaning into misogyny, leaning into male supremacy, white supremacy, and propagating all that shit, you will be uplifted because the right needs women. The right needs people of color, women, to give them a veneer of respectability. They tokenize them and go, hey, well, it's not like we're all evil, violent white men over here. We have women. We have women who are saying these things. Okay, thank you for the gifted sub, Bad Buzzy. Thank you for the prime. Whereas on the left, as somebody who focuses heavily on women's issues and trying to always talk about misogyny and sexism, you don't have the same built-in structure. Granted, because it's the left and we just don't have the same infrastructure. We don't have the same like billionaire funded infrastructure, but also because you have to battle that stuff on the left as well. Having to battle misogyny, having to battle leftist viewers who are just conditioned to prioritize men, white men, believing them to be authoritative figures. Like that is all social conditioning. Unfortunately, we all live under the same patriarchal system. So even if you ascribe to leftist politics, you are still not immune from that conditioning. You're still not immune from how misogyny just creeps into every single fucking facet of life. So it's frustrating that it's frustrating that realization that on the left, you have your work cut out for you when you're doing this kind of stuff. J Ment B, thank you so much for the 5 gifted subs. Swasin, thank you for the gifted. Hogan, thank you for another gifted. J Ment, thank you for the 2 months. Hogan, thank you for another gifted. The right just have to fight the left has to fight the system. Exactly. So if I were over on the right, I know I joke all the time that I could blast off, right? I would have I would be put on. I would have a massive following. I would be making millions of dollars because they need people like me. They need women. They need women of color. They need us because not everybody is going to buy into the vile, hostile male supremacists on the right. But there are others, both men and women, who could buy in if the messenger is somebody like me, if the messenger is someone who looks like me, if the messenger is someone who sounds like me. So far right movements have always needed women. They have always needed women, and they have also always based their movements around the oppression of women and the excuses of needing to defend white women in this world, right? White men being the defenders of white women, which is why they have to stop Muslims. They have to stop migrants. They have to stop trans people. It's it all comes back to women. Just like leftists need women to stop pushing us out of leftist spaces. And it's like leftists often will engage in benevolent sexism, which is still sexism. And it is not something where leftists will see the value in women who are promoting leftist beliefs, whereas right-wingers understand that they need women to keep the movement going. Not just the labor that women provide, women who organize, women who cook food, women who make the posters, women who do a lot of that labor that they've always done in far right groups and far right movements, but also women as messengers, women as a shield, women as a justification that this is not just something that men are saying because they're men. Church women are huge organizers. Yeah. Yes, they are. Have you heard of Lady Izhar? Lady Izhar. Yes. Yes, I have. I think somebody told me about her recently when we were having this conversation. Speaking of women's issues, I'm getting my IUD changed tomorrow. Y'all pray for me. That shit hurts so bad. I am praying for you. I am praying for you. Get yourself a treat afterwards. They can't stand women that challenge them and advocate for all principles or policies that are aimed towards tearing down their control. Yeah. And the other thing too is that for women, they are being pushed to the right because they basically, now, not all of them, but obviously, as I said, this is not homogenous. This is not just necessarily one way that things are being done, but women who are responding to the failings of neoliberal feminism, the failings of feminism that prioritizes the capitalist class. And so they look at that and go, well, feminism sucks. I would rather not have to work outside the home for shit pay and no healthcare, no support, and also be expected to be providing domestic labor for free, and also be told that like I'm bad because I want to have kids. So that will push them in the direction, in the rightward direction, because they feel like, well, I'm getting blamed on all sides here, and I'd rather be with the side that at least cherishes me as a mother, me as a woman, albeit having a very narrow, a very narrowly defined role that women can and must fulfill. And also it's like responding to misogyny on the left, where they go, okay, so there's misogyny on the right, but there's misogyny on the left as well. But on the right, they are welcoming me in. They are encouraging, because that's the thing, right? It's like, yes, it's a very restrictive view of womanhood and what a woman's role is in society, but they are using language and making it seem as if they cherish women and view them as view them as important in the role that they play in this world. And these women feel as if on the left, it's like they're just mocked. They're just, anyway. Anywho, so a lot of different ways that women are susceptible here, and also different ways that women are radicalizing on their own on their own content turf. Didn't Reagan win basically because Republicans understood they need to counter the feminist movement led by women? Like Phyllis Schlafly. Yeah, I mean, Phyllis Schlafly was out there since, what, the 50s, fighting against the ERA, being a mouthpiece while also advocating for women to be in, like, submissive roles. Is it restrictive? Amy Coney Barrett is on SCOTUS, is a mother, and is educated conservative. Well, it depends on what subgenre of the right you find yourself in. They will, in certain spaces, right? In certain, when we talk about conservative versus far right, the spectrum here, where they will say, look, Amy Coney Barrett, she has a job. She is in the highest judicial court in all the land. She is highly educated, but also a conservative woman. So there is that, there's that propaganda of, hey, ladies, you can be conservative, but also we're not going to stop you from being educated. We're not going to stop you from having a successful career. But the caveat being, as long as you are still, a conservative and you are pushing conservative ideology, that they basically look at it and go, we need to reprioritize families. We need to reprioritize the nuclear family. We need to have women who, if they have jobs, they are still having children. They are still serving as wives and mothers, and they are still upholding conservatism. The far right people like Nick Fuentes think women shouldn't work. Yes, Nick Fuentes is obviously very extreme, very online type of right-wing instigator, where he's like, your body, my choice. He's like, you should rape women. That's how you will have, that's how men will get what they need, is that you just take it, right? He's very violent. It's very, very hostile. And that's not appealing to everyone, but that's why it's like, there's all of these different categories and subcategories, genres and subgenres under the larger conservative, right-wing umbrella. Read a horrifying statistic in The Guardian where men pretty much never read a book written by a female author. It was like 82% of men. Yeah. Yep. And I will tell you that I have had plenty of experience with leftist men and also leftist women who, by virtue of me being a woman, think that I am just not, I am not authoritative. That ultimately men are the ones on the left who we should entrust with power because they're men. That is social conditioning. That is not something that leftists are immune from. Or leftists who will say, oh, Caroline's really pretty, but she's just not smart. I'm like, why is that? Why don't I know what I'm talking about? Why don't I know what I'm talking about, but men who talk about women's issues on the left know what they're talking about? Let's unpack that for a second. Where is this coming from? This just automatic, I'm going to call it assumption, because I know these motherfuckers aren't actually watching my content, but this belief that I am a nice, pretty lady, but I simply cannot fulfill this role of educator and communicator is certainly not like men can. Something to consider. I see comments like this all the time. I will see comments like this, even in the areas of commentary that I spend so much time on and have it's very much my thing, that I will still be compared to men who will talk about the fact that it's not their thing, that they're not the ones who should be listened to here. And yet they will still be like, no, No, it's the men understand this. They understand it more. They obviously don't always say that explicitly, but it's implied. It's implied. And it's not just like my personal experience, my lived experience being erased here, but the fact that I read the texts. I've studied the theory. I am not just like, oh, listen to me because I'm a woman. It's listen to me because I study feminist theory and literature. Like I am trying to communicate in a more digestible way. Plus, I have it combined with my lived experience. It sucks the most when it comes from women. It does. It does suck the most when it comes from women because it's like, girls, really? I know we're all fighting against patriarchy here, which influences us in ways that we're not always aware. But would you really rather listen to a man talk about women's issues than a woman who is relating on a personal level? The fuck is up with that? Sorry, I trust your takes way more because you have a perspective I trust more. Yeah. And it's wild that it's something that unfortunately people, unless they come to the awareness that they are participating in patriarchy, they're not going to work at dismantling that. They're just going to continue to be like, yeah, I think this thing to be true because it is true. And not that I think this to be true because I am influenced by patriarchy, because I am exhibiting beliefs that are encrusted in misogyny and sexism. When men explain things regardless of tone, they're taken seriously. When women explain things, even if they're right, they're called condescending. Yes, it's the same thing with like how women are allowed to communicate versus men. Right? Women yelling, women not even yelling, but women having a certain tone versus with men, how that is, it's encouraged, it's allowed, it's acceptable, it's valued, right? Women who are too emotional and yet men being the ones allowed to display anger and be yelling all the time. Especially as an older woman, everyone, including younger women, see you that way. Yeah. Yeah. So this is what I mean by the fight when you are a woman on the left communicating these ideas is multifold. There are so many different ways that you are being you are being silenced, that you're having to fight against. It's a lot of work to just get to doing the work. Whenever I spoke to my ex in any kind of voice, he would tell me I was yelling at him, which was basically a tactic to silence me. Yeah. All right, y'all. I think I might stream a little bit later. I might come back tonight. Maybe. maybe I'll come back tonight and do a condensed stream. But I gotta go take care of some things. Maybe gaming. And we'll see. Maybe. Captain Julia B, thank you for the tier 1. Thank you very much. Cool. Go piss, girl. Yeah. But that was a great combo. I enjoyed, and I hope you did as well. Thank you for joining me. I will maybe see you later on in my usual time. We'll see if I do, it'll be a bonus stream. It'll be a surprise. Always love a morning stream. Would love morning streams more if I one of these days got more than 4 hours of sleep. But every time I even try my best, something happens, like Will accidentally poisoning me last night, resulting in serious stomach issues that had me up until 4 a.m. Classic. Will tried to take me out. All right, y'all. Peace out. Have a good rest of your day. Until I see you next time. Bye-bye.